Coming back to the stage, the director of Shame, Steve McQueen.
It's like the first time I've seen it, actually, in a strange kind of way. Anytime you take yourself out of it, then you feel a bit wounded. That's odd. Okay, you don't know what to do.
Well, I think there might be someone else joining us.
Yeah, Michael, come out.
I wanted to ask, with your debut feature, Hunger, which we had the privilege of screening here at TIFF a few years ago, you took on an overtly political and ideological subject matter. Now with Shame, the film seems to be equally political, if not more so, but in a much more subtle way. And I'm wondering what motivated you to take on this subject matter and in this way.
It was just having discussions with Abby Morgan, the co-writer, and we just talking just through a long conversation. And what it was is, I started off the conversation and said I just want to make a love story, and I wanted to put down the gun. I mean, every film, there's a gun and there's revenge and all kind of nonsense, but there's so much stuff going on, indoors, not being sorted. I thought, let's talk about that. And you talk about the internet and this whole idea of sort of pornography on the internet and how accessible it is. The whole idea of sexual addiction as such, and how accessible sexual images are sort of to us every day. 2 clicks on your computer, and you're in. And it just sort of snowballed from there, really. And it was just sort of fascinating, I mean, again, I also was thinking about Lost Weekend, Billy Wilder film about alcohol addiction. I thought, interesting, a film about addiction, but this character needs another person to fulfill his addiction. I thought that's interesting. There's drama right there.
And now we'll open it up to the floor. Are there any questions? Yes, right here. The question is about, before you do long takes, do you do rehearsals? Do you rehearse a lot? And whether or not you get in front of the camera yourself? Is that behind the camera?
It's kind of very difficult. I mean, we plan things out. I mean, what happens is, I sort of see what Michael wants to do, what Sean wants to do, and then we sort of work together on it, really. So it's kind of it's a rehearsal. It's not a rehearsal because, again, Michael might want to go left, we have to go left. Nicole might want to go right, we have to go right. So it's loose. It has to be loose in order to sort of work with actors. I'm not interested in choreographic sort of, hand here, arm there, that kind of nonsense. You hire actors because they're geniuses and they can do a great job. So you follow them and see what they do, and you pick up. And obviously the cinematographer, Sean Gordon, who has been working for 10 years, he has a sort of instinct, inane idea of how to do that. And we discuss, and we talk about images a lot. So I don't go behind the camera, but I talk about painting images, and the whole idea of the widescreen. I just love the idea of an intimate situation, but you're still using the widescreen sort of fill the space, because there's always a relationship with another object or another thing in that frame. So it's always a relationship. There's always a relationship going on within the frame.
Any other questions? Yes, over here.
Hi.
The question is, what draws you, Michael, to Steve McQueen's work?
He's a handsome man. Well, it was like, the first time I met him, really, I just sort of realized that there was somebody sort of special sitting in front of me, somebody who had sort of real empathy, somebody who really loved human beings and liked asking questions about, why we're here and how we relate to each other and how we relate to ourselves. And I just knew that, I was going to learn something from him, and that, you know, I must work with this man.
Another question. Yes, over there.
First of all, Michael Fassbender, you're an acting god.
Yeah!
My question is actually for Dr. McQueen. Just wondering, in my art history student lesson, but I saw some like Roy Lichtenstein like images there. Do you have any other sort of or do you have any other influences like?
By coincidence, I'm not thinking of that. I mean, I'm not thinking about Lichtenstein, I'm not thinking about Einstein, I'm not thinking about Scorsese, I'm thinking about Coppola making a film. This is an interesting question, because often I get asked that question. You think about, you know, when I'm in the middle of a shot, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking, how can I do the best thing possible here at this moment? And it's just about the frame, it's about the characters, the actors, and the lighting and so forth. Yeah.
Next question. Are there any on the balcony? Yes, up there. I see you waving. Yes.
Just being a man from the UK, why set it in New York? What was the reason for that?
The question is, why set the film in New York, especially as you're from the UK?
Well, I wanted to place this character in a setting of excess and access. And New York seemed to me to be the ideal place for this character. You know, we're not there yet in London as far as 24-hour city is concerned. As, you know,
You have to know where to look.
Next question. All right, right here in the front.
Hi, Michael. You did a great job in portraying the pain that Brandon felt. What kind of research did you put into it?
Really?
The question for those in the back is, what kind of research did Michael put into the role?
I just sort of threw myself into it. No. You know, it's kind of the research for me is pretty much always the same. It's, you know, the script, and I just spend a lot of time with the script, and that's kind of what I tend to do with all scripts. I just sort of reread it, and after a while it sort of, I don't know, sits in your enamel, and it's almost like another sort of layer of skin. And then of course, meeting people, you know, talking about people that are sort of going through this. And then, of course, discussions with Steve, you know, and then we sort of, you know, workshop some ideas, and but the bulk would be just sort of with the script, spending lots of boring time alone, sort of, you know, just sort of getting to know that as best I can.